This video is for those of us that suffer with anxiety quite often, but seemingly for no reason. Now, there was a study once carried out with groups of monkeys and their infants. In the first group, the monkeys and their infants, every time they needed food, it was really, really easy to get hold of. Every time it was just there, yeah? In the second group, the monkeys and their infants, every time they needed food, it was difficult to get hold of. So every time they needed food, literally every time, it was always difficult to get hold of. And now the group in the middle, for the monkeys and their infants, they never knew. Sometimes it was going to be hard, and sometimes it was going to be easy. And they never knew on any given time that they needed food, whether it was going to be hard and whether it was going to be easy. Now, which group of infant monkeys do you think grew up with the most problems? The reality is, it was the ones who were never sure how hard it was going to be to get the food. The ones where it was difficult all the time, they adjusted and they knew they knew they were going to have to work hard every time to get food. The ones where it was easy, of course, they just got food easily every time. But the other monkeys and their infants were under a lot of stress, because uncertainty creates stress. And so anxiety is often linked to this feeling of uncertainty. Now, you might start thinking, that's fair enough, but I get anxiety for no reason, and I've got nothing to worry about. There's nothing in my life currently that's stressing me, and yet the times when I'm most anxious is when there seems to be nothing going on. And that's been the case for me. What a lot of people don't know is about something called implicit memory. And now that is not the memory where we're able to picture our memories and picture what happened to us. Implicit memory is when our brains remember the emotions. And for lots of us, when we were younger, we would have gone through periods of stressful time. For me, I grew up in an alcoholic home for the initial 9 years of my life. And so my brain and my mind links uncertainty to times when there's nothing happening. So when you grow up in an alcoholic home, quite often the most worrying and stressful times is when it's all about to erupt and when you're wondering what's going to happen. So this is true for lots of us, right? Because lots of us have grown up in homes where there was a divorce, there was separation, lots of moving around perhaps. And this isn't to blame the parents, this is just the reality is that some of us grew up in the stress. Now, what our brains learn is that when things were okay and nothing was happening, our emotions would tell us that we needed to start preparing because something was going to happen. And that is why when we grow up into our adulthood, it can seem like anxiety is on us most when there's nothing going on. I know for me, like when I'm concentrating and I'm doing something and I've got something to aim to, my anxiety is much less than the times when there's nothing going on. And that's where I find it difficult to just be myself, difficult to just be. And of course, then anxiety becomes self-defeating, because when we don't feel anxious, our mind then starts preparing us for when we're going to feel anxious, and so we become anxious again. So understanding this and knowing this doesn't actually stop it happening. It would be great if it did. But what it does do is take away the shame that we feel. When we start to understand that there's a reason behind why we're feeling anxiety, then we take it back. We take the power back. We take the control back. And I think, like I've said lots of times before, one of the biggest things we struggle with when it comes to anxiety is that feeling that I shouldn't be feeling like this and I need to stop feeling like this, and we try not to feel like this, and then we start to feel like we're weak and that there's something wrong with us, and why can't we cope when there's no reason to feel anxious. And then of course life situations come in as well, and lots of us do have worries and stuff to feel anxious about, and we pretend we don't. Even if we don't have this implicit memory of times when, you know, when we were stressed and when we were worried when we were younger, perhaps we had the perfect childhood, then when we're adults, what we tend to do is try not to worry about the things that we're doing, so we push them down, and then anxiety comes out of us that way. So quite often anxiety will present itself to us in them moments when it feels like there's no need to be anxious, because it's our mind and our brain telling us to get ready for something that's going to happen, and that's why we feel anxiety. And then of course from that as well, the anxiety can get worse, because when we start feeling anxious, we start feeling worse and worse, and then it all comes on us. So for those of you out there that are suffering from anxiety and you feel like you have no reason why, I hope you can begin to understand that there is logic and there is reason behind it, and you're not defective. Lots of us are struggling with it. I know I certainly, it still comes on me and it's still there. I don't claim to be someone that's defeated anxiety and never gets anxious anymore. I'm simply somebody who suffers from anxiety, but I feel like I'm the one in control of my anxiety now, rather than my anxiety being in control of me.